Good evening, folks. Welcome aboard for a bit of roadmap action. I'm here with Adam. Hello, Adam.
Hey, good evening.
Adam, who heads up the preserved collection crew, the preservation crew, the preserved collection
Preservation
crew.
crew.
As is always the case, we're going to start off with what's going on right now, and then we'll move to today's topic for discussion, which is going to be what just happened. There you go. That's as good a summary as anything. What just happened is going to be our topic for the today. But for those of you who haven't seen today's roadmap, don't bother. It's the same as the last one, with fewer things on it because we put some stuff out. And several people have said, why are you even putting out a roadmap if nothing's moved on it? For the same reason as you do a weather forecast every day, even if the weather hasn't changed. Just because the weather hasn't changed doesn't mean you don't do the forecast. The roadmap turns up predictably every 2 weeks, and even if nothing's changed. It is your means of seeing what's coming in the future and what we're actively working on at the moment. If that doesn't change sometimes, it doesn't change sometimes. I think this is the first time it hasn't changed at all. I think we've always had at least one thing going on in there. But anyway, Adam, what are you working on right now?
So we are finishing up our work on West Somerset and Bakerloo. It has gone on a little bit longer than originally planned, but that's really come together nicely. And in fact, our audio guy Martin is still working on the main specifier audio, the improvements to the audio on the locos. He helped out with some other projects where he got a great bit of learn on with setup of features. And some audio training, and he is now bringing that back to main specifier. So he's trailing a little bit behind, but we're hoping to be all back together come the beginning of June. Yeah.
So what are the changes that should be expected on those routes then? So if you don't, I mean, what are you putting together?
Well, surprisingly enough, Bakerloo obviously was rather light on feedback compared to previous routes we've been working on, being one of the launch trains in World 2 routes. However, we have managed to, I think I mentioned previously, we've sorted out the speed limits so that they now trigger from the front of the train. We've realigned the stopping positions at stations so they're a lot more consistent, because that is one of the key parts of the London Underground route, is that stopping at stations. And one that wasn't in, actually, it came in with the LGV route, was how the platforms are wet under rainy conditions. So I think previously there is just a kind of a blanket wetness or snow across platforms, right. And in LGV, they came out with a much better technique of doing it, where it was a lot more based on the shape of the station, the shape of the canopies and stuff. So we've been trying to bring that technology in. It's been a bit harder than we thought it would be, but yeah, it is adding some great life to the weather on the route.
What's the challenge then? What makes it complicated to implement?
It's not one of those things where you can just add it on top of the station or the texturing that's already there. It actually does need to almost be taken into account when the original authors create the station and do the mapping of the platforms. So we have had to go to a few places where we've redone the textures in terms of the way they're mapped out, rather than, say, make them higher resolution or something, or change the color. But it means that now, I think we decided originally we weren't going to put snow on Bakerloo because there was fear about snow being in the tunnels, or a snow-covered train going down into the tunnels and it looking really weird, because obviously it would melt. The tunnels on the underground are very hot. But this should allow us to bring it back, bring things like winter and snow back to Bakerloo, where I think we didn't have it first. So yeah, we're trying to bring that. So even though Bakerloo is actually in a really good state feature-wise compared to what we have been doing with older routes, we're still finding ways of bringing these routes up and making sure everything we do not only implement some of the feedback that people are giving us, but also tries to bring something new every time. So yeah, that's really cool.
Okay, cool. What else have you got on your hot topic list at the moment? So main spec art barn, you finished the work on that a little while ago. That's currently in the test cycle, right?
Not yet, no. We have delayed it because we want to, following recent events, we want to go back and double check that everything is where we expect it to be. So we're already implementing some lessons learned, and making sure it is another German route. It is a route that everybody is very passionate about. We don't want to repeat issues. So yeah,
Don't-
we're not
You're
putting it together yet.
spoilerising the rest of the show. There, let's talk about
That's
that
on
in
the
a
bingo
moment.
card, isn't it? Adam announces
No,
at
no.
the end of when he's announced
I
something.
mean, the question is more about, you know, how far along are we talking?
Do you know what? The recent releases shows that I can say the work is done from the dev perspective, but it can still be months away. We still haven't really sorted out the release process against the main routes and train releases. So it's somewhat pointless me saying how close it is. But we don't expect to be working on that stuff for very much longer at all. So we are bringing it to a close from our perspective, and then working on feedback and the likes of QA and the beta forum finding issues for us.
Okay. Now, I mean, the big topics that people always like to hear about is how the new stuff is coming along. In close proximity to one another, we have Glasgow Cathcart Circle. We've got Clinchfield. And then we've got the 313.
Clinchfield that already came out.
Cane Creek. Sorry, I've got
Creek.
Clinchfield on the brain. I was playing it earlier.
Well, you're in the right region of the world, that's for sure.
That doesn't count. No. I've just had the wrong one in my head. Cane Creek and Cathcart Circle and the 313 are all fairly close together. According to the Magic 8 Ball that Mike used earlier on today, Cathcart Circle is likely to be first to arrive, and then Cane Creek might well be the second to arrive. We'll keep you appraised of the running order when things get a bit closer. But you should expect to start to see articles appearing on these soonish. Soonish?
I've been very impressed with Cane Creek. Really impressed. Skyhook have
go on.
a lot of history with working. I've worked with them on a number of occasions. So I actually worked with them on the Semmeringbahn route, where they did the awesome mountains that route passes up through. Also, I was lucky enough to work on Soldier Summit, and again they did the really tight creeks there. So. I've always been impressed with their ability to bring rocky outcrops and that parts of.
Based on the screenshots they've shown so far, I'm looking forward to seeing it in action because nice. Yeah. Looking forward to seeing how that turns out. So that's in the stuff to look forward to. All the rush hour routes, they're obviously the early production work's going on those now. They're trotting along. But this is why you're not going to see additional routes, locos, that kind of thing added for some time to come, because there is going to be a lot of focus placed on the rush hour release for the summer. Exactly when in the summer, take a swing at it based on when we've released our big summer update in previous years, and you won't be far adrift of where we're aiming for. But these things move around, so you know. Until we give you an actual date, don't hang too much based date on it. There you go. That's pretty solid. Yeah, August. There you go. Noni says August. August is a fair guess. Couldn't give you any more accurate than that for the time being. So so that's the update on those. We're not going to cover any more information about them because that's not what we're here to talk about. There are plenty of other streams where we try and get you excited about stuff that is still to come. In this one, though, we talk about development work that is ongoing, where the intention is to make the game better, fundamentally better, with an optimistic thumbs up from Adam. And we had 2 releases last week. We had the major update, Adam, you could just keep breathing. We had the major game update that introduced a whole slew of fixes across the board, some of which we'll talk about in a moment. And then we had Hamburg, Lübeck as well, which was not a strong release. The route itself is actually pretty good. Matt's in Matt's opinion, he's having the most fun playing that at the moment, but that's not the point. The point is, it was not released in fit state for our standards. It did not come up to scratch. And then at the same time, the update that came out had problems that should have been spotted. Both of them had problems that should have been spotted. Glaring stuff. If you encounter something within the first 10 minutes of playing it, then something somewhere was missed. And the first question is a relatively straightforward one: is what happened? And the answer is we don't know. We don't know how these got missed. And yeah, that's not good. So we do have an internal investigation going on as to why these things were missed. Because look, we release a lot of stuff, and that includes updates. It includes extra routes, extra locos, all that kind of stuff. And we hold our hands up and say, look, it's not flawless. The stuff we release is not flawless. There are usually bits and pieces that aren't spot on in everything we release. It's always going to be this way. Until we get to the point where we've got an AI fixing absolutely everything in the background and missing nothing, and then they're making it photorealistic, that isn't photorealistic to the real world, but photorealistic to how you individually think it should be in your brain, it's never going to be 100% flawless. That said, there is a line under which we should never fall. There is a benchmark under which we should never fall, and certainly it falling over in 10 minutes or one thing that doesn't quite work in the first 10 minutes is not good enough. It is not one department that is to blame for this. If we fail, it is as a company. It is as a company that we fail, and it's as a company that we succeed. So the question becomes, what are we going to do about it? Well,
do we see the mini Adam down here?
Have you got? Oh, you got a mini Adam in the corner. I could remove that if you want a mini Adam removing from the corner there, Adam. I can make that.
It's my conscience.
Look, I'll make you larger. There you go. There. See, you were putting me off my flow. I was in full flow there. There you go. Let's put you about there. There you go. That's rather spoiling the movie magic. Either way, the whole point of Adam's team is to improve the game. Now, I'm going to cover one thing off to start with, and that is the passenger information screens on Long Island Railroad. Now, we talked about those for a while. I mean, we're talking about it for months because this was kind of a big. This was a big hitter.
It was the first one. Yeah, it was the first route we were going to tackle.
It was important because when it comes down to it, this helps sell the feeling of immersion, the feeling of being there. It's a large step to, or rather, their absence is a big immersion breaker. Now, I mean, there are things that we could do that are a bigger impact on immersion. If we were to nail sound as well as we've ever done it, then the whole immersion factor goes up through the ceiling. But for things like scenery and getting passenger information screens right, getting it not quite right isn't quite good enough. Now, this is where you and me are to blame. This is both you and me, right? Because I was very excited about the prospect of passenger information screens being added to Long Island Railroad, and at no point did I think to ask, it's going to look like the passenger information screens from Long Island Railroad. And at no point did you volunteer, it's not going to look exactly like the passenger information screens from Long Island Railroad. That was something that was missed. I didn't think to ask, Adam didn't think to volunteer it, and so it's unsurprising that people thought it's going to be a pretty good representation of passenger information screens on Long Island Railroad. This is a small issue, right? It's not a big thing. Why did they end up that way, Adam? Just out of interest.
So that was our goal. Yeah. We still do have the artwork, but as you, if you do watch the roadmap streams frequently, I set that we spend, the team spends a month working on a particular route, because there are a lot of routes that everyone's interested in, and we need to get round to every route in a timely fashion, at least the first pass. So yeah, I set the deadline that we would only spend a month on it, and we had this artwork. We originally installed the southeastern boards, because that's where we were. That's where we learned how this system works. That was the best system at the time. And then as time went on, we could not get the new artwork to function. We needed, I think this is the ones where it's got the colored text, and the bars of the text. And yeah, it just wasn't coming together. And I was faced with the choice of, do we stick with what we've got? Do we pull it? And given how we felt the PIS boards, the feeling it added to the route, the immersion, just the liveliness, now that you can stand at any station, you know what's going on with the trains, I did not want to pull the work that we'd done.
Well, you've hit on something important there, and I'll cover that in a moment. But here's the thing. When you spoke about artwork, because I remember these conversations, you said, like, we've got an artist now working on these. In my head, what I saw was, oh yeah, that's someone to build the surrounding infrastructure, the metalwork that goes around the outside of the screens, not the dot matrix display.
Well, actually, to be fair, that's what I thought it was as well. I thought they were all in control of it, and I didn't really contemplate that. Yes, they can put the artwork together, but it still needs to be powered by code. I was under the impression the code, the functionality was there, and we could just change the dressing of it. But no, it was beyond that. So we looked at the artwork as it was installed, and we looked at the real route. I'm a big fan of Flickr. I have a great Flickr account on there myself, in fact, and decided that actually the southeastern artwork was not a million miles away from one of the styles that is available on Long Island, but it wasn't that style that we aimed for originally. So yeah, I took the decision that we would go with what we've got.
Yeah, and that's where it got missed. Is that it was Adam delivered what he was always expecting to deliver. Meanwhile, both the players and myself had a slightly different expectation. Now, if this is not your home route, so let's say you're in Germany and you're playing Long Island Railroad, and you've never been to the Long Island Railroad, you just quite like it as a service concept, then you'll kind of go, passenger information screens are in, cool. Despite the fact that the dot matrix display is using a UK dot matrix, and rather than the real deal. And this is important because actually that's a big fail. It's not a case of getting it halfway right. It's more that actually by not being right, it draws more attention to itself by being wrong. You could say the same thing about having the low step rather than high step dostos on Hamburg Lübeck. Now, we've talked about that extensively in the past, but by it being, no, you've made that's the wrong thing, then that's actually worse than not having it in the first place at all. And
that's where we differ, and they are some of the things that the president have to deal with. We did make a choice, and we did make a decision that we felt it was better than not having anything, and we did feel it was close to the artwork we were seeing. It wasn't the brand new system that we started the project with, but we felt it was a good representation. Now, you put it out to players, and the feedback is that it wasn't a good representation. So those are lessons we need to learn.
And lessons we have learned, or at least we've taken it on board. This is a big learning in that close is not quite good enough. And there are going to be incidents in the future where we hit close, where we don't hit spot on, or we don't hit a good facsimile, but instead we've done something that is a halfway house in that direction. But what we will be doing on a kind of an introspective basis is we'll be saying, are we better just not having this at all? rather than something that falls short of what would feel authentic to someone, and therefore actually undermine what we're trying to do. Because what we never want to do is make something worse.
No, 100%.
And
100%.
there are a few incidences within the update that went out where arguably we have made things worse. And that just sucks. I mean, I recall you yelling quite clearly at me on patch day when we discovered in the morning, where QA spotted in the morning that there was one service that broke a dozen routes within the new timetable on rapid transit. And you were like, well, let's not put it out. But by that time, it's already queued to go out.
Programmed, it's gone, yeah.
And we had two choices, because if you're putting out an update on PS4 or on PlayStation or on Xbox, those are queued in advance. On Steam, you've got more control over it, but we were left with the choice of, well, we could pull the update from Steam, and we went, well, we're not going to do that, because the second that we do something different on one platform or another, people get, rightfully, their nose pushed out a joint as a result of it, and that again is not what we want to do. So,
and there is a lot of people are saying, well, why didn't you wait until it was ready before putting it out? Why wouldn't you? Do you have more confidence? We did have confidence; it was all good. Yeah. We were ready for it to go out, and it's the irony that you always get that situation where the horse has now left, and all of a sudden you realise there's something you missed. And we did know before it went live that those issues with the S6 line were in there, and it was really disappointing to find that out.
Durfast76 makes a great point. Surely QA after something has been released is completely redundant. No, we operate very differently to any other game developer. In every other game developer, what you'll get is you'll have release cycles, right? Where you have an up period and a down period where things get busier, things get quieter, things get busier, things get quieter. We don't. We run at full speed all the time, and therefore when we're doing the QA team are constantly testing. They never stop. It is one of the biggest teams in the company, our QA department. Mikey, I think it was Mikey, asked a moment ago, how well does the QA team actually know railways? And the answer to that is actually interesting. Well, I'm going to tell you the answer. The leads are rail fans. They are very much rail fans. The difficulty comes from local expertise, and this talks to Hamburg, Lübeck, for example. Is we didn't have as many experts in PZB testing as we would normally, which is how the magnet issue was initially missed. Now, it should still have been spotted, because we do get expert folk go through everything. But there were some dots that usually join up perfectly in the test cycle, feeding back into development, which then feeds back into the business about whether something is ready or isn't ready to go. Had we found that 2-3 days before launch, we would have pushed the launch back to get it fixed, or we would have developed a patch for it straight away to go out as an immediate patch.
Well, we did consider attempting to do a patch last week, and actually we decided it was better to give it a few more days, because we don't want to rush a fix out and find something else gets reported.
Right. So we do have fixes coming, and they are coming quickly. The wait should be days, not weeks. Whether it's this week, whether it's that next week, don't know for certain yet. But there will be some fixes. There'll be fixes to the stuff that are the most critical. There will be more fixes later on, but we'll try and get a feel for exactly what's happening and where in that regard. So stuff should be dealt with relatively quickly on that front. But even then, it's not what we want. This is not how we want to do things. And when we look at the when we look at the review scores and we see that the review scores are in, they're in mixed or not as good as mixed, we do take that seriously, and there is much more in terms of improvement that we need to do as a company to raise our measure of what is and is not good enough, and it's obvious that in the last few months, but the last update last week, we've fallen short of standards that should have been kind of set in stone. So that's not good enough, and we accept that is the case. Someone said a moment ago, where was it? Oh, it was to the extent of, if you don't know what went wrong, how can you now fix it? It's not about what went wrong with the game. It's about what went wrong with the process of testing the game. Because our testers do a very good job, and where you may disagree with that is that, well, there are still bugs, and this is twofold. Is that firstly, there will always be some bugs. It's a complicated piece of kit, this one. What there shouldn't be is bugs that you stumble upon immediately and just kind of go, well, that's rubbish. Where it breaks the game and you're unable to play any further. Those you should never see them. But, something goes a little bit wonky when you're 45 minutes into a particular scenario where you've done something that's slightly unusual. There may well be a bug in there. But they will trap the majority of bugs. And between the QA team and the beta test team, they'll identify a ton of stuff in there. What then happens is it becomes a case of which ones are we prepared to accept as this is not going to disrupt the enjoyment of this route for the vast majority of people. Anything that breaks the game, anything that stops the game from functioning is called a Class A bug, and we don't let Class A's out of the building. We usually don't let Class A's out of the building, but sometimes they escape, and that's what we're trying to figure out, what in the process fell over with that regard. Yeah, and I think that's the long and the short of it.
There's been some great stuff. I haven't been very vocal on the forums, but I have been all over the forums in the last week, like a rash. It was probably inappropriate to mark every thread that I was paying attention to and reading, but I was definitely reading. A lot of the feedback, and certainly as much as possible of the feedback that is appropriate to turn around quickly, we have been attempting to implement. I've got a great hot fix that I think the door was closed today on no more changes, so that we can start testing this update. So yeah, lots of stuff coming out, and it really does matter that people were posting and lots of different repo cases, lots of different hardware platforms as well. It gave us a really good idea about how things were panning out for people.
Liam saying, will we give them a redacted version of why this happened? Only if it's something that will bring you any satisfaction. That if we find a failing internally and fix it somewhere, then we'll just say, no, we fixed the problem, it's fine. But you don't take our word for it. You wait and see the evidence of things working a little bit better than they were previously. But no,
Do you want me to run through the stuff that we've put into QA testing?
Yeah, go for it.
About a dozen or so. So on the list that has been submitted is obviously a fix for the S6 Leipzig service derailments, as well as the opposing arrival marker issue where the marker was inside the buffer. We have fixed the ice trains missing from the timetable. They were certainly simulated, and when we ran simulations, they were there. But when you play it on foot, they weren't. We have fixed the missing intermediate stations that were off route on rapid transit, so they now appear. This is a really good one, actually. I took this one from suggestions on the forum. There were no Talent 2s in the new timetable. Obviously, the original timetable for rapid transit, you can drive the Talent 2 the entire length of the route. But in the new timetable, the way that the Talent 2s have been assigned, they only drove as far north as Leipzig Messe. Apologies if I've said that name wrong. So what I have implemented is I took one of the BR 182 formations that was running services on the S2 line and changed that to a Talent 2. So you can now run a Talent 2 on the Leipzig-Konowitz to Dessau route. What this does mean is there's still 312 services in the new timetable, but there are now, from 162, there are now 174 services for the Talent 2. For the 182, that means it drops down from 37 services to 31 services. And for the Dosto stock, it drops down from 75 services to 69. So now, if you don't own the 182 or Rus Nord, which brings in the 143, you do actually now get to drive the Talent 2 the full length of the route. So that was a really good suggestion from the community. We have addressed the PZB and LZB issues that got reported, as well as a few minor floating trigger markers for scenarios that are found on the platforms. Moving over to Long Island Railroad, we have resolved the Port Washington services ending on 2 platforms at New York Penn. Again, I have no idea why that occurred. We did not touch that service, but that was a great report, so we went in and we fixed that. Again, a massive one that we were quite shocked by is the sudden change to a lot of red signals in the timetable on services when you're stopping at stations. Again, we did not touch any of that, but we have gone through, we've reviewed the timetable and stopped that from occurring, so you don't get red signals coming into stations anymore. I saw some of these came about because we were in the route fixing, responding to fixes, and I saw these on the forums as well. So some floating car stop markers at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stations. Ironically, this came about because when we installed the new PIS onto the platforms, we moved or removed some of the posts holding the fake PIS boards from before they were activated, and these car stop markers were attached to those. So where they were, we were now looking at the PIS and missing that there was a floating sign very close by. So we fixed those. And I also took some feedback about there were wrong pathing of express trains between Jamaica and Penn Station. We did address some issues with express trains running out of New York Penn. We've now taken on board the feedback and addressed the ones coming into New York Penn as well. And then because of the amount of talk about the PIS system on Long Island Railroad and looking at what we are doing or not doing about it, or what we have or haven't done about it, we have tried to adjust what's currently there to be a lot more reflective of what is in there in real life. So we have some screenshots, if Sam would be so kind.
Oh, you betcha.
So we've looked at how the setup of the signs were, what they were displaying, and made some changes to those. So we've gone for stopping instead of calling out. We've changed it from coaches to cars. We've changed the way the stations are represented. So Penn Station instead of New York Penn. That was actually written when the route was first developed, and we were never expecting that data to appear. So yeah, we've gone through and made some changes. That is the system that's going to be there for the time being. So we've done what we can to try and improve what's there and get it looking nicer.
And capitalisation, of course.
Yes, and adding in things like mentioning Ronkonkoma and Port Washington, so adding in those extra details to the timetable. It's not to the level that the new rapid transit timetable is, where it shows every station in between, because there are an awful lot of stations beyond Long Island Railroad route that we've developed before you get to the likes of, say, Ronkonkoma. But we have tried to get something in that will at least lessen the concerns about how the PIS looks. But I can confirm on the other side of things that we don't have working dynamic boards on the trains yet, and so that's why we weren't able to get them in. That is a technology we're still learning on the preservation crew how to implement. So that will come into future updates to the Preserve collection.
So let's talk sound, because that's another area that you addressed on Long Island Railroad. Were you looking at sound on the 182 on Rapid Transit as well?
Yes. So we looked at the 182, the BR1442 Talent 2, the M3 and the M7. All had sound work done to them. But what we've obviously read and the feedback we've got is that we have made changes, but they're not yet meeting expectations. So we still have a lot of learning to go there. So yeah, all we can say is that yes, we're at least people have confirmed we made the changes. But yeah, we've still got lots of learning to bring them up to speed.
It's
However, I will just say one thing.
Go on.
We did try to take the Cologne 442 sounds and put them on the Talent 2. We did literally do that, and the way the two trains are set up, being several years apart in development, we could not. The sounds from the Cologne 442 were not compatible. They were built in quite a different way.
By which you mean the game codified sound rather than the OGG or WAV files that were used originally to build those sound packs, right?
Yes, it wasn't a case of just lifting that setup and putting it on another train in Trenton World. Yeah, so we are looking now at so what would have the solution been? We did not budget to recreate the sounds from the original source as the team. We weren't in that position yet. We aren't really in that position now at the moment to redo any audio on trains from scratch. We still need support from the main development team. So we have made some changes, but we still have a lot to learn from the feedback. Yeah.
So a lot to learn, though, is not, we're going to go fix that straight away.
We can't ever say we're going to fix something if we're still unsure how we should be fixing it. So, yeah, we're still learning. And what we will do going forward is put more pressure on the QA team, on the beta forum team, to say, right, we need these sounds. Are we making the right changes to the sounds of the trains? Because, we address things like the air conditioning system, the horn being louder when you close the window, traction motor sounds, random sounds cutting out. We did address those, but it appears that we didn't address them in the right way. And that wasn't brought to our attention until the release.
I'm going to answer DJ Glio's question, even though I'm not entirely sure he's typed it correctly. She, beg your pardon, has typed it correctly. Do the S6 services, they do work or they don't work?
We have a fix for them.
We have a fix, right? Okay, they don't work at the moment because he's written that the S6 services were now working, and I assumed it meant not, and I assumed it meant where. Were, not where. How is it possible we didn't spot that they weren't working? Actually, I know the answer to this one. This is one where I do know the answer. The answer is that Rapid Transit came with an entirely new timetable. And I spoke to Matt about this, and basically if you change a timetable, if you build a timetable from scratch, you have to test that route as though it is a full new add-on release. You have to go from the ground up. You have to test it using all of the standard test plans that we do, and classify everything in the way as though it was a full route. And it wasn't tested in that fashion. It was tested as though it was an update to the game. And it is an update to the game. But it wasn't tested as though it was a route. Updates get, what is this fix supposed to do? And an awful lot of checking that the fix is doing what it's supposed to do, followed by full sweep tests that then check that everything else is still working the way it's supposed to do. And the full sweep checks, we don't know why they missed. So that's what we're investigating. We're figuring out why this stuff was missed. And that's all there is to it. If we need beta testers with a lot of time, we've got beta testers. They have a lot of time and they do a good job and they give us good feedback. I don't believe, although Matt will correct me tomorrow if I'm wrong, that they were testing the update to the game, but they will have tested Hamburg Lübeck. And so the question becomes, how did their feedback, which is often, it's critical where critical is warranted, and how did the QA team's feedback either miss the obvious issues that were present, or how did that information not get received at the other end? Because but for having services that crash the game in the first couple of minutes, that would not have been released under normal circumstances. It's as simple as that.
The fix was when we made the fix within an hour of learning it.
Yeah.
And that was where the pain came, that the fix was ready before the release. But by that point, it was already in the process of being released. There was no way of adding the fix to it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to sound, we're not in a position to change it at the moment. That's the big problem, is that there is a lot more goes into sound than simply twiddling a few knobs to get the volume settings right. And at the moment, we're not in a position to do much better with sound than we do currently. Sometimes we have good days, sometimes we have bad days, but or releases, I should say. But fundamentally, the sound is what it is. Now, we know from your feedback that the sound falls a long way short for quite a few people on where they want it to be. So it is high up our priority list in terms of, this is something we actually need to go out and actively combat and actively do a better job at. And steps are being taken to make sure that happens. But until it does, then, I mean, we're not going to speculate on what might change in the future. This is more about, here's the situation as it is right now. There we go.
And that's, in all fairness, that's one thing I really like about the preservation crew, is we have, and we want to have, a lot closer relationship with the community, and we want that information. We want to know what people care about. We want to know what the players want changed and want improved, and that, to a large extent, forms our priorities. So yeah, I really like that the preservation crew can take time to do this stuff. Now, I say it can take the time. We still need to call time on projects so that we can get through the very vast catalogue that we do have in a reasonable time frame.
If the fix was ready within an hour, as you mentioned, why not just release it as a day one patch? Because the words day one in a day one patch means that's when it is released. Patches, all of them, go through testing, and
and not only that, but we were also
scheduling.
Yeah, we were also in the unfortunate position that the update to Hamburg Lübeck had also been prepared as well. So not only have we missed the window for the patch update, but there was no window to join the next update either. And that's when we took the call that let's not try and rush something out here. Let's take a step back, absorb what the feedback is going to be. Let's see if there's anything else that matters to our players, and we'll actually do this in more of a rounded effort. So that's why we've got just over a dozen fixes that we're putting in as part of this. But also, to answer a question, there are no audio improvements that are going to come in this response yet. We still need to understand what we want to do to improve the audio.
Steady on with yet. Steady on with yet. Look, it's.
I always want to do
no,
so
I know,
much, but yes.
But that's a human thing, right? Is that you know that there is better that can be done, but you don't know whether we're going to have the facility to make that happen.
Correct.
And therefore, yet is aspirational. It is not factual, and we try to be. And you know what? The PIS screen's not delivering exactly. I only use it as an example. The PIS screen's not delivering on proper authenticity. That was human error, but it still comes across as us having not told the whole truth along the way. The human error was in not asking the question of, are these aiming to be authentic? With everybody assuming different things around the room. But we try to only be factual when we talk about stuff that is and isn't changing. And therefore, yet is a very dangerous word, because it sets the expectation that it will be dealt with.
And the preservation crew does have a very busy schedule and a lot of things to pay attention to. So
yeah. Bank says release content later if it needs to be fixed. We do. If there is a Class A in there, we will release it later. But the fact is that the company is built around a set number of releases per year, and that's it's the commercial reality of the world we operate in. And therefore, we do need to make those releases. I mean, someone will immediately say, like, "Oh, yeah, but if it was 100% scoring, then it would sell 100% more copies." No, it simply wouldn't. That's not the case.
You know, the route originally got, so let's take, for example, Long Island Railroad. It got its original dev cycle, and people say, well, why don't you just take more time to finish it even further or polish it even more? Well, the preservation crew effectively spent another 4 months of work between us on that, and there were still things that managed to slip through the net. So that's a perfect example there that, we can take more time. It doesn't always equate to catching everything, sadly.
Robert says X number of releases only works if X people keep buying them. Absolutely true. And if we do fall short of a standard on a regular basis, people will stop buying them. But we definitely don't want it to reach that stage. But what we're saying is that, you know, Hamburg Lübeck is not to the standard we want. And therefore we're taking steps to ensure that we don't drop to that level again. Platitudes of that kind are ultimately hollow unless we then deliver on it. But we fully acknowledge that we have not hit what we should be hitting, and therefore the onus is on us to go and redress that and make sure it doesn't happen again, while fixing as many of the issues as possible. A lot of people are asking about Rösignor Freight Exchange. That's not one I've seen.
Yeah, Freight Exchange, that is on Rösig. So there's an issue there with the red signal at the start. I can confirm we have fixed the issue. I'd reported in previous roadmap streams that it was a lot more difficult than originally believed. Because the thing that caused the issue in the first place was updates made for the BR363 DLC, and that little locomotive that came out, the diesel shunter. So I couldn't just undo those changes, or if I made changes, I now have to check, obviously, the 363 is okay. So yes, we have now sorted out Freight Exchange. I'm hoping that will be released with updates to main specibahn, but at the moment I don't yet have a time frame of when that fix will come out. But yeah, we have fixed Freight Exchange.
Trains and Cab Rides said that we said exactly the same thing after South Eastern High Speed. That was with regards to the scenery. Is that, you know, extra attention is being paid to ensuring that that we're getting the environment in that much better a shape than we had it in on Southeastern. So, we've said before, okay, we've fallen short, we're going to try and fix it. But that was on a different issue. That was not on the same issue as we've got here. And don't get me wrong, it's apples and oranges, but at the same day, it's still the same fruit basket. But yeah, no, anytime the one truism is that anytime we make a mistake of some description, it's only a bad thing if we don't learn from it. If we make the same mistakes repeatedly, then the mistake wasn't worth making. As long as improvements are made in the future, and that means that if we're going to do something that is classified as a shortcoming in authenticity, we should be evaluating whether or not it is going to add more value by actually releasing it, or it's going to do more harm by releasing it. That's one thing we're taking away from the experience so far. We've got to make sure that our QA let's group QA and beta together, and that our testing process through to the development kind of feedback cycle. Someone asked earlier who classifies issues that are found in QA. QA do. They issue the classifications. We're going to make sure that communication loop is rock solid. and that those test plans and the enaction thereof and the feedback loop that comes out of that and the reciprocal action that comes out of that, we've got to make sure that works properly. If we
saw some great questions about responding to why we couldn't move the sounds from the Cologne setup to the rapid transit one. So basically, why do we not settle on a standardized train setup so that we can easily swap components around? Trains aren't standard. So I saw another comment about we need to learn from the people that improved, or the developers that improved the Great Western Express audio. We have, but then the changes they made to those diesel vehicles are not the same changes that we need to make to electric vehicles. So yeah, there is an awful lot of exchange of information, but a lot of trains require a case-by-case analysis. So that is one of the things that we're learning on the preservation crew, is you can't just apply, unlike say the PIS system, or adding the Skybox, or adjusting the track rendering. There are some aspects that we need to take on a case-by-case basis, and audio is something that needs a lot more customization to it.
Okay.
So another one, sorry, the Xbox compression issue. I said that the clicking and the Xbox issue had been resolved. That is what I've been led to believe. So I will put my hands up and say I trusted my developers when they said, yeah, we've got to the bottom of this, and we want to put it out. So if that hasn't been resolved, I can only say that fair enough. We'll stick it back on the radar to bring up again, and we will keep working on that one. And yeah, actually, I had noticed the question about the new Skybox mod. We have seen that.
Yeah,
I've been paying attention to that. That does look really, really cool. It is a fantastic thing. However, in looking up the details of it and what would be involved, we are under the impression that it only works under certain conditions. So it isn't a universal solution. And
I don't take anything away from it, because at the end of the day, if someone comes up with a clever mod and we can actually make use of it, we'll go and make use of it.
We were looking at it for sure.
Yeah. We'll get in touch and we'll go like, this is brilliant. Do you mind if we add it? And what do you fancy? It will possibly be a slightly more formal conversation than that, but ultimately that's what it will boil down to. But only if it's something that we can actually employ across the board. If it's something that is very, very bespoke to one platform, which it quite often will be, then there's not a huge amount we can do with it, unfortunately.
But yeah, it did come on for later on. We did take a look.
Why is Adam having to explain Hamburg Lübeck? Because it's Adam's a developer. He is the sacrificial developer on the roadmap stream. Yeah, so you say. And therefore he's speaking on the part of development. I have spent the better part of today talking to as many different departments as possible to try and get a well-rounded answer on exactly what's gone awry in this particular case. So it's not that it's Hamburg Lübeck per se that we're talking about. It's more that it's failings as a company is what we've been kind of trying to talk about, and how they're going to be addressed in the future. But ultimately, it's up to you to decide whether we've addressed them or not when future stuff comes out. Plenty of people do reviews. We do preview streams to try and let you see behind the scenes before we release it. And the other thing that we're going to try and do is, if we spot something, I spoke to Matt on this subject earlier. If we spot something wrong in a preview stream, we need to call that out and not hide it in a preview stream. Even if that is subconsciously trying to hide something, doesn't matter. If you look away from a flying passenger, I mean, that's the most common one you're going to get, is a passenger behaving in a mysterious way. We have to embrace it. We have to embrace the flaws that are there, and then take the decision on, well, are we fixing that or not? It should never be something that we shy away from, because the whole point of a preview is that you as players can get a fair assessment of what's coming. Because if it isn't good enough, then you will have seen that it's not going to live up to the expectations that you've got, and you can make an educated decision for yourself. But that's why we do preview streams. Obviously, we want to get you excited about stuff, but not when you wouldn't, as a player, actually get excited about it. If you kind of go, no, that's a deal breaker for me, then that's fine. That's a deal breaker for you, and then it's our problem to actually make it not a deal breaker and for you to actually get excited about stuff.
I've got a few more.
The previous stream for Clinchfield didn't have holes in every tunnel entrance, but the release route does. I've played it. It doesn't have holes in every tunnel entrance. Not that I've seen.
I was saying on the previous stream it didn't, but it got fixed before release.
No, it's the other way around. It's the other way around. Okay, well, I haven't spotted that. Was playing Clinchfield earlier on today. There you go. Why not fix the wrong dostos on Hamburg, Lübeck? Because that wasn't something to be fixed. Yes, they are the wrong dostos. All right? We knew they were. I mean, you yelled as players to say wrong dostos, wrong dostos, wrong dostos from the very first time we showed a screenshot. But we'd already taken the decision at that point that we felt that the route itself was strong enough to get away with using dostos that we'd already developed in the past, because time constraints being what they were, we wouldn't have time to rebuild a coach. And building a coach is as work intensive as building a locomotive. The main reason for that is the interiors. The interiors use up a heck of a lot of time in artwork to pull them together. So yeah, there's not a real thing. But I also think
that's awesome. You know, there's been a lot of talk since I think it was maybe our last stream where we had Matt on about interiors and what they have. And I actually think that's a fantastic thing that Train Sim World brings, that the Train Sim 2021 doesn't have. I just absolutely love being able to walk around and enjoy this stuff firsthand, where I wouldn't be able to in reality. So, you know, it enables even me. I'm an enthusiast of this as well, and I can get in and see what this stuff is like and get up and close with it. So I love that effort that goes into the interiors.
Yeah, hence is saying we need to put the wrong dostos explanation in the ticker. No, we don't, because this too will pass. And this is what we mean by again, it's the PIS issue again. It's this is a deal breaker for some people. This is an immersion killer for some players, and they are not wrong to say that this killed off the immersion in this route for me entirely. But where we have to decide whether we as a development team, as a company, are prepared to run that risk of having something that potentially kills immersion. And as time moves on, people will either they'll get used to it, or later on we'll do a high step dosto and we'll put it onto Hamburg, Lübeck. That's speculation. We're not doing that at the moment, so therefore we're not doing it. It's not on the roadmap, therefore it's not a thing. But it's the kind of thing that in the future, if we decided that, sure, let's do it on a dosto, because they can't get enough of them. And that's the other thing that we hear, is that we repeat using the same stuff an awful lot of the time. And that's a fair cop too. We do pay attention to your feedback, and this all feeds into how do we take the game from where it is to where it could be next. Now, everyone who plays it, who works on it, can easily envisage where could it get to, hypothetically, throwing an infinite amount of time and developers at it. Where could it get to? That's Fantasyland. All we're after is where can we get to next? What is a realistic step for us to take from here to better, and then from better to better still. Train Sim World now is better than it was a year ago. It might not feel like it all the time, but it is. It is a better game. It is a better simulator than it was a year ago. A year from now, it will be better still. That is not to say that the road will always be smooth. There will be bumps along the way, but the goal is keep getting better as we go. And because we bring all of the routes with us, maybe not as fast as we'd like to, but work is done on them. And sometimes the delivery of those improvements of those routes isn't exactly perfect. But it was, Would you say that the changes to Long Island and rapid transit, would you say that they were more hit than miss, more miss than hit? What's your personal opinion? Even though players may disagree.
I would say it was a big win. I would say that we've made a fantastic improvement to rapid transit and Long Island. You know, I use the word fantastic. I like to think of the situation we were in is that we drained the swamp on those two routes, and now, if there is any feedback, like I've listed out with the hot fixes that we have currently put into QA, we can get to the nitty gritty of what are the literal things that we need to change. We can be a lot faster and a lot more reactive to feedback now. We don't have this looming big pile of post that says, oh, you know, this route's been out for a long time, and we've had feedback coming in for months and months and months that we haven't been able to work on yet. So I do feel a lot better about the situations with rapid transit and Long Island now, and it leaves it's able to highlight what are the final things that that people are still concerned about. Yeah, so I'm pleased.
So you're of the opinion that overall it was a positive. I don't personally, with the list of fixes that we were putting out there, I was going, this is great. This should be, you know, one of the high points of the year in terms of actually driving progress forward. But then we undermined our own good work because much like there's occasionally gaps in scenery that you get around to fixing eventually, there was a gap in the test process that meant that we missed stuff. And that's what we're aiming to do. David says Steam. I haven't mentioned Steam today. No news on Steam. There we go.
So I have a few other items. We got reports that the pathing on the scenario designer, this is on rapid transit, by the way.
Yeah.
The pathing on the scenario designer between Petersroda and Bitterfeld takes you over the flyover. So you have to run wrong line between those two stations when you're heading north. Actually, that is intentional. If you pick a path that uses Bitterfeld platform 3, that will run you correct line from Petersroda into Bitterfeld. If you pick a path that is to platform 5, at Bitterfeld, then in order to reach platform 5, in order to reach platform 5, it does need to run wrong line over that flyover. So yeah, that was intentional. And also on rapid transit, there was a feeling that some of the Dosto consists or some of the trains appeared randomly, whether they were facing north or south. This is for loco-hauled formations on the rapid transit timetable. That was again intentional because we did want to add variety to the lineup. Otherwise, every time you pick a 143 or a 182, you'd only ever get one pattern. So we put in a ratio of 2-to-1 that they would be facing correct direction to incorrect direction or unusual direction. We've now reduced that down to 1 in 4. So there is one train out of 5 trains that run around with the, I think it's on the S2 line on rapid transit. There are 5 trains that cover that service pattern. One of them is facing the other way. That is backed up by reference material we've got directly from the route. So I have seen trains running in different directions.
I've got that. Are you done on your shopping list?
I have 1 or 2 more, but we
go on. Go ahead. Finish the point.
So Long Island Railroad, you can't pick a custom livery for the timetable. This is a big one, and this is actually one of the top things that we looked at as soon as we started working on Long Island Railroad. Why can you pick different sized trains instead of being able to pick different liveries? And this is actually, and why wasn't that changed when we released the update? That is actually the way the timetable has been built. It is a limitation of that timetable, and the easiest explanation I can give, and I have had to spend time thinking about this because a coder explained it to me. It took a long time for me to absorb. Basically, you've got M3, the M3 train and the M7 train are made of 2 cars, unique cars, and then they couple lots of these pairs together to make 6, 8, 10, 12 car trains. M3s and M7s do not run together. So the timetable has been set up that if you pick an M7, your entire train only consists of M7 pairs. Or if you pick an M3, you'll only ever get M3 pairs. The downside of that choice to make that consistency is that you can't then interject your own train, as it were, into that lineup.
So it'll be the same livery throughout then. But surely that would mean that if I'd done my 2-car pair of an M3, then it would do the whole train in that M3 double bill.
Yep, and that is exactly how East Coastway works, and how Southeastern works. But trains go up and down the line, and you change direction when you get to the end, and you go back the other way.
Yeah.
So when you're going forward, the train you pick in the front end is the one that starts the consist, and then it repeats down the consist.
Yeah.
So you pick your custom livery, and then all the pairs are then that livery. If it's the back of the train, because now you're going in the other direction according to the timetable,
then effectively you haven't picked a livery.
Yeah, it's spawning the rear from where you're driving, and if it gets to the other end where you are and it's different, the system's failed. The system's going to break. So it has to be locked at the moment. That the way that Long Island Railroad is set up is that you can only pick the type of the length of the train because of the way they operate on Long Island. You can't pick the custom livery.
Right. So that, I mean, that's a good example of a Class A then, isn't it? Is that, you know, if you get to the other end of the line and the whole game crashes because of you've chosen a custom livery, then that would be a Class A.
Yes.
Right.
So a design decision was made there that on Long Island, that is the way the system would be set up, and that is why when you press Q or you change your livery on the Long Island Railroad, you can only choose the length of train, and that is why certain services are only available on certain size trains on Long Island. That is. So we did try and fix that. It isn't something that can be fixed. That is the way the timetable works. But you can use your custom liveries in the scenario planner.
Right, I'm
done.
Stu Joy, a couple of minutes ago, said that, because we've given a bit of an inconsistent answer, and that's fair enough, that we gave the impression that sounds were going to be improved by the preservation crew, and then 15 minutes ago, we said they're not going to be improved. What gives? Well, we talked about this while we were warming up for the stream this evening, is that Adam's team did improve... air quotes, improve the sounds for the M3 and the M7 and the 182. The issue came back after the release where, they've changed, but I wouldn't say that they were improved. Would be a kind of a sentiment feedback that we got. To say that they can't be improved is wrong. Obviously they can. It's mostly a case of we don't have time scheduled in or talent available at the moment to actually do that work. Muddy language on my part, probably. Does that stack up with what you told me earlier?
Yes. Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm not misquoting it.
We're still doing audio changes. We're still making updates to audio. What we will do from this experience is push a lot harder onto the QA team and the beta team and say, what is the take on this audio? Are our changes the right changes? Are these the changes that need to be made? We did get feedback that we had made improvements to the audio of the M7, the Rapid Transit 1442, but the consensus is that they weren't the right changes to make. So.
Right. So Cole Kern says, so the M7 stays broken. It stays as is. For the time being.
I wouldn't say it was broken. No.
Yeah, I mean, it might fall short of what you expect, and we always try not to fall too far short of what people expect. But it is what it is for the time being, at least. And I've fallen into my own trap. For the time being is the same as saying yet. It is what it is at the moment. Until it's listed as anything else than that, then that's the way it is. Robin's got a very big question about water. Missing water on the Peninsula route. We haven't looked at the Peninsula route yet.
That is the next queued up. We're a little behind where we wanted to be at this point in time, but Peninsula Corridor and Oakville is next on the to-do list.
So no sounds is not broken. It's only broken. Here's the delineation mark. It's broken if a sound is supposed to be sounding as far as the game is set up, but it is not sounding. That's broken. If it is not very good sound, but it is working as intended, then that's not actually broken. Does that mean that we won't improve sounds that aren't delivering on the experience that you'd expect? No, not at all. We want to get around to improving the sounds across the board. We want to, but that's based on scheduling the right people to actually do the work, and making sure that we can actually deliver on an improved sound experience overall. And that's where the difference is. So no sound is not necessarily a broken feature, but no sound is not. I'm not trying to flog you that no sound or poor sound in a different environment is acceptable, but it is the way it is right now, simply because it is working as it was designed to work.
I mean, it's the same as the PIS on Long Island Railroad. That is, we have implemented what we intended to implement. We had the more customized artwork aspect of it that didn't get finished, but the PIS that's on Long Island was what we intended to implement. You know, it turns out it wasn't up to player expectation. It wasn't up to expectation of people running around on the route. So we're taking that on board, but that is the PIS that we intended to install.
Is the alerter sound on the M3 going to be fixed? Because that was working and now isn't.
That is news to me, certainly. So I haven't read any reports about that, so I may have missed that on the forums if it has been posted.
Okay.
Noted.
If you haven't noted it on the forum already, please do so. Adam reads it all the time, and it's where he gets your feedback from. So if you want to give Adam feedback, that's the best place to put it, because
I wouldn't say best place. It is a great place to put it, but the best place is Kayaku, because it logs it in the system, it registers it with a unique ID. We can track it. We can then also go back to a player and say, oh, this isn't occurring for us, we need more information, or can you give us more repro steps? So post it on the forums, great, but please also submit a ticket. It really does matter, these tickets.
In fact, loads of people are saying that there's all kinds of stuff, that sound areas where there is no sound playing now.
That is worse than I was aware. So we'll look at it. At the moment, though, if that is the what we did to the M7 and the M3 and that we believe was appropriate, if that's not appropriate, we need to go back and think, right, what do we need to do that's appropriate?
Mondi, you're absolutely right. If there was sound before the update, sorry, I was coming from a seat of what's the word I was going to use there? Ignorance. There you go. I was coming from a seat of ignorance. If there are sounds that were present and now aren't present, then something has gone wrong there. At Adam on the forums, and he'll immediately go and look at the thread where all this stuff is listed. No, apologies for me suggesting anything other than that. No, that's not the case. But where a sound plays quietly or no sound is developed in the game at all for a particular feature, that's not broken, that is working as designed. Anyway, that's the delineation point, but in this case it does sound like some stuff is broken. There you go. Right, okay, let's do another few. Xbox still has looping sounds. Looping sounds are always going to be difficult to resolve, because that is a big change to the way that those sounds are put together in the first place. We know, and
it has the compression issue on Xbox.
Yeah,
as well.
we know that it's off-putting, and it is something that we're trying to improve. But hey, sound, we know that's something that we need to improve, and until those improvements are noticeable, are measurable, then yeah, sound is our Achilles heel. Apart from last week, where sound and the test cycle working were our Achilles heels. How about a bug reporting tool in game? Well, yeah, I mean that's something that we could develop, but
that would take development away from something else in game.
takes development time away from something else.
It might be better that the community team work on something like that for the forums, although we have got Kayaku works really well.
Yeah, there you are. It's there's any number of things that we could develop that might actually make life easier with that regard, but we don't have a shortage of issues that have been reported that are under investigation, are being considered for work being done on them, are in varying stages of being fixed or changed or updated. But until they see the light of day, then they might as well not exist. And one thing that came out actually of the Long Island Railroad and Rapid Transit's updates overall is the sense of, why are we sitting on these for so long? That's normal. That is completely normal behaviour. It's only because of the roadmap system that you were aware they even existed. In the past, that wouldn't have been mentioned. It would have turned up out of the blue with maybe a week's notice. So you are getting to see a little bit behind the curtain of how stuff gets done. We've still got the passenger information screens for East Coastway haven't gone out yet, have they?
No, that is very close now.
Very close. Well, we keep saying it's very close, but it's still not close enough that we can actually put a release date on it.
Well, this is because we don't control the release cycle. That is a different department, and they have many things to juggle. So
there is a lot of stuff to line up. Anyway, the kind of the big change this time around, putting aside all the other topics that we talked about, is that we have pretty much caught up with where we were supposed to be at this point in the year in kind of the grand scheme. I'm maybe calling it a grand scheme where it's not actually that grand, it's just the overall plan. So that should mean that that some of the, I don't know, there is a general improvement to test cycles and release periods for fixes and so forth. That doesn't necessarily mean there'll be more of them, just that they'll be spaced out in a more sensible fashion. So you won't go small one, larger one, medium sized, larger one, flipping enormous one with loads of stuff in there and some of it doesn't work. It means that we can package this together in a slightly more predictable fashion. How that actually manifests, I don't know, but it means that the extra workload that we've been kind of deploying to catch up, we've now caught up on that. Is there a cause and effect between that extra workload and last week's wonk? Don't think so, but I can't rule it out. I don't think that's the case, but no, that one can't be ruled out.
Someone else, Models Trains has just said they're obviously new to the stream. We have mentioned this already, Sim. The freight exchange issue has been resolved. Don't yet have a release for it yet. Also, in response to Hentis on Oakville subdivision about opening up the rest of the map, I'm not allowed to talk about aspirations, about what we'd like to do. So
Good work,
when we have a list of what we have done, that is when we'll talk about Oakville.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, look, it might sound like I've got a piece of gaffer tape hovering just over Adam's mouth, but we try not to talk about aspirations unless heavily caveating them, because we know what we want to do with the game and how we want to drive it forward. We've got, we regularly reference a whole ton of stuff that we really want to get done. And this can go from tiny things up to, enormous whacking great features. But if we talk about those, then we build your expectations up that they'll someday see the light of day. And
PIS on Long Island, prime example.
Well, that's different because you were actually working on it. But the roadmap's there to kind of show you what we are actually working on.
And obviously the reason the roadmap is somewhat light is because we've been working on responses to last week's update.
Well, and because it will be light from time to time. There will be times where it doesn't move. This is the first time I think that there's been absolutely no change other than the stuff that's been released. And that will happen from time to time, simply because of the way that release cycles work. Oh, someone earlier on said, how is it that we're able to develop 3 routes in parallel for the summer release, whereas normally we've only got one going at a time? Multiple teams. We have multiple teams who work on new stuff, and that includes a combination of people inside Dovetail. It includes external kind of contract partners that we work with. For those who saw the explanation a while ago, to be second party teams that we work with to get this stuff done. And rather than staggering those teams to have launches coming up, at a regular kind of pace, so that there's always something fresh just around the corner, for the summer release, we lined them up so that we can deliver on something that is compelling across the board. So there's something for everybody in there. The question then follows: well, how is that going to affect the testing capabilities for 3 routes at once? My goodness. We're always testing 3 routes at once, if not more. We're testing core, we're testing routes, we're testing locos. It is a constant process of testing that is going on. Multiple routes, but we can't really even release one route correctly. I point you at all the routes we have released correctly. With one route out of the 30 odd that we've released so far had a major bug in it that stopped progress. You can put at others where you can point at others, kind of go, well, that wasn't very good, or that fell short of my expectations, but that was at least delivered in the way it was designed to be delivered. That then becomes subjective from your point of view but does that deliver on the experience that I want? So yeah, multiple teams can, each route is built by one team. And it ties in various other different departments on a kind of flexible basis. But given that we've got a fairly consistent theme around the rush hour launch, then it means that a lot of the core stuff that is going on at the same time, it actually affects all of them at the same time. So it makes sense to do them all at the same time.
Question from Dominic: do the upcoming fixes concern the signaling, the PCB magnets, and the LCB on the 182? Those fixes are in test at the moment. Yep. And I did see another question. Sorry, I need to scroll back. I did have. It's gone. I'll have to come back to it. I did have one that I wanted to answer there. It's gone. Scrolled past you quick.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can stop it scrolling, right? You can just use your mouse wheel there, Adam, and scroll it on up a little bit.
Because then I'll miss everything when it catches up again. So
yeah. Okay. Right. That's it. So
that was it. Sorry, no, I have seen it. Should we stop reporting issues on Long Island and Rapid Transit as the hotfix has already been done? Absolutely not.
No.
One thing I like, as I said earlier in the stream about I use the phrase "we've drained the swamp" on Rapid Transit and Long Island. That's why I'm pleased. Despite its rough release, I am pleased with the update that we've done. And if there are still things outstanding, we should still know about them. So please do report stuff that you find. I am reading the forums, even though I'm maybe not responding to them to say I've read them. I am paying attention.
Actually, I'm going to answer DB Spotter in Germany, because he's asked the question a couple of times. Are the layers services on Hauptstrecke München Augsburg going to be fixed on consoles? They're not broken. They're missing. There's a difference. Will they be added at some point? The solution that we want to employ is very much like the BR Blue pack, the Legends of Diesel pack that we did, whereby there is an alternate selection of timetables that you can pick from on München Augsburg. The two options that we have are figure out how to optimize down to the point that we can get it to run. That's the reason it's not there, is that it crashes your console if we add those extra layers on. If we put all the same layers as you got on PC, your console can't handle it. So the alternate option is going to be we add a separate set of services so that you can pick and choose which services you want in operation. Now that takes quite a lot more work, and Actually, I'll talk to Matt about it and see if we've got any movement in that area, because I don't know one way or the other how that's progressing. Optimization work is a constant constant process, and we're always working to try and make the game run more smoothly on a core basis. That in itself may solve the problem, in which case it's just a case of turning it on, because the work's done. But until we reach that point, there's nothing much else we can do about it. So it's not broken, it's just not there. And that is a hardware limitation that we're trying to get past, either the hardware limitation or at least offer you the ability to enjoy different services on that route.
So someone said, please don't downgrade the PC version by creating different timetables. Is it worth looking at what we've done with Rapid Transit, where we've got a larger timetable and a smaller timetable, and those are available to everyone?
Maybe, could be, possibly. There's a lot of it's. It comes down to, well, hold on. Are we going to schedule the work to actually get that done? Do we want to deploy the gameplay team, who are the ones who come up with timetables? Are we going to deploy the timetable team, the gameplay team? Are we going to deploy them on this problem to get the problem resolved, or this shortcoming to get the shortcoming resolved? And I've no news.
Yeah, that's definitely a Matt question for sure.
That's a Matt question, and I know that Matt's plate is full at the moment with rush hour based stuff. So time always marches on, and therefore, you know, there is always a sense of we're looking forward, but increasingly we're also looking backward, and that's where Adam comes in and his team comes in, because increasingly. The routes that we release and the locos that are released, they get used again in other locations. So we want them to be as good as they can be. So more attention is going to be paid to stuff that has already come out. And that's just a case of... when we get there, we get there. One last question from the crowd for me. You can cherry pick one question there, Adam. Why do sounds tend to get reused from various trains in the game and put onto newer locos? Is it really that hard to get a recording of a real train and import them into the game so the player can achieve the most realistic experience as possible? Because reusing a sound just goes to show laziness, or that we couldn't get the sound.
Or that it is the same sound.
Or that it is the same sound. Anyone, not trying to make anyone offended within the DTG team, but that's how stuff feels. How stuff feels. That's what we're always up against, right? We have to try and deliver something that you think feels right, and it doesn't matter whether we use a reused sound, whether we use wholly new sounds, whether we use someone banging on a teacup, as long as it feels right when we deliver it. We reuse sounds because recording train sounds is difficult. It's time consuming, it's difficult, and it's not always something that we can get. When possible, we will go to external people who have sound packs ready done. They've done all the recording work, and we'll go, hey, could we license that off you? Because we do licensing. Licensing's kind of our jam. And if they say yes, we'll use them. But sometimes we have to fabricate sounds or use sounds that are appropriate to the case in question. And we've only got that right if it feels right to you. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what that sound is made out of, as long as it feels right. It doesn't matter what the train looks like, as long as it feels right when you're doing it. The whole thing is down to the individual perceptions of the player. And by and large, the closer we get to reality. So if we did sample the real sounds, there's a high chance that we'd get closer to reality. But there is still a chance that you'll go, no, that's all fake. That's rubbish. It doesn't sound anything like that. I'll watch this one video.
I won't name the DLCs, but I know 2 DLCs in the history of Trains from 2021 where the sounds were 100% synthesized, and the experience was fantastic.
Yeah.
And it was never mentioned. And there were sounds that were 100% recorded from the real train, and they were hated. So we also know that it's not. But that's
the prevailing feedback you get, and that can come down to how we've actually executed on sound.
Yeah, so it's not just about having the right sounds.
Roy says it's got to sound good.
Yeah.
Define good. And that's going. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that what we've done is 100% across the board good. We know the trains that you report back and go, that one sounds great. The 465. Everyone says the 465 sounds brilliant. I can hear the difference, and I'm not the biggest train aficionado in the world, but I do like a train. But yeah, I can tell the difference, and it does sound good by comparison to some others that sound less good. But that's the overall goal, is that they've got to sound good.
I've seen a few questions about, do we accept sounds from players? Do we accept communication and stuff to supply
We're
sounds?
not set up to do so.
Yes, exactly.
We've
We
had
have
sounds
offers.
submitted
Yeah,
by
we have.
players, and we're just not set up to make use of stuff that's submitted at the moment. But there is an ongoing conversation about how do we get set up to accept stuff from players, because I think that the wisdom is swinging in the direction of, you know what, the players can extend what we can do by a very long way. So watch this space on that front.
Yeah,
what I will say is,
conspiracy debunked.
if you
We are
reckon
not
you can
holding
put
any
together a
editors
sound
back.
pack, you have to own the copyright to all those sounds, which means you have to have recorded personally those sounds. And that doesn't include you recorded a YouTube video, because sound is a copyright hellscape. You have to have personally recorded those sounds, or you know the person who did record them, and you have a written license from that person to use those sounds. But we're not currently set up to take submissions of that kind anyway.
I was just going to say, debunking the conspiracy theory, we are not holding editors back because it may impact sales of DLC. Far from it. We want editors out just as much as you do.
Yeah. The reason we haven't got editors is we can't have them. There's too much rubbish that goes along with editors that has absolutely nothing to do with making an editor, or the fact that you're going to go off and make something brilliant that sells 20 times the amount that we do. No, that's not it at all. If you reckon you could build something 20 times as good as we do, get in touch. We have a third-party program, and they'll be thrilled to hear from you and your team. But ultimately, it's just a case of, we want editors. We want you to be able to edit stuff and share it between yourselves and all of that kind of great stuff, because that's what makes these kinds of games come to life. But we do not have that facility at the time. There we go. Right. That'll do for today. Look, there'll inevitably be some questions that are missed. We can't get to them all, particularly when it's on a subject of, why is this happening? Why don't you? Why do you? Why? Because there are answers that we could give that just would not bring you any satisfaction at all. They wouldn't make you happier. They wouldn't make you wiser. That doesn't mean we've ducked them. It just means that we've answered the ones that they appear to be the most pressing. If we have missed anything, hit us up on the forums. We tend to answer stuff when directed at us, when we have an answer that we can give. Hopefully, next time around, the roadmap will see some zesty new action, but it might not. It might not. You never know. We don't tend to know until a couple of days beforehand. Anyway, thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Can I answer one very final question?
You could have done it before I got into the wrap-up, but sure, go ahead.
You're too quick. My favourite colour is orange for Strike Eagle. There you go. Orange. Thank you very much for this evening. It's been great. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right.